Hello Yu-Gi-Oh players and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I am your host, the RJB0. Today I am going to be furthering your knowledge of economic Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is what I call it now because Yu-Gi-Nomics just sounds silly. Anyway, the reason why we study economic Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Yu-Gi-Oh! Economics is because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a very economic game, and understanding the functions of economics actually helps us to improve as competitive players. So in the last video, I discussed with you guys the first Krugman principle of Keynesian economics, which thrills and chills abound, I know. And this video, I'm going to be talking about the second one. And for those of you guys who are racing for the back button on your browser, know this. The one thing that economics are really good for is providing new perspective to things that have absolutely nothing to do with economics. And I promise to you guys that you will, at the very least, find a new way of thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Having listened to this video. So I advise you to check it out. Now, the real reason for my making this video so quickly, at this particular time, I suppose it's actually been a decent amount of time since my first video, is because I'm sure many of you guys have heard Patrick Hoban talking about what he calls marginal Yu-Gi-Oh!, which, since I happen to know that he is also an economics student, makes me fairly sure, in fact, that he is referencing marginal economics, which is outlined by the third principle of economics, as proclaimed by Paul Krugman. So I want to get to that as quickly as possible, so that I might be able to beat Patrick Hoban to the chase, and then everybody's having fun. Except possibly Patrick Hoban. But he's highly unlikely to watch these videos, so I think we're all okay. Let's get down to my absolutely massive Paul Krugman economics textbook that I've had for a couple of years now to check out the second principle of Yu-Gi-Oh! Economics, which reads as follows, and I quote, "The opportunity cost of an item is what you must give up in order to get it, and that is its true cost," which sounds like absolute mumbo-jumbo. So why don't I translate it for Yu-Gi-Oh! Players? What that basically means, to give a specific example, is that the true cost of making a play is the set of possible plays you could have made with the resources you used for that play. So if you make a certain play and maybe you discard a couple cards or use a couple cards from your hand to activate their effects, the cost of making that play is the possible set of plays that you could have used those particular cards that maybe you discarded or used up in order to make that play. The possible set of plays that you could have used those cards to make. Now, it applies to a couple of other things in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I want to focus on that plays thing for a second because it's really important. Because one of the most important aspects of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is speculating as to how a game or a match is going to go. When you are in the game, you want to be looking at your cards and looking at your opponent's cards and thinking about what you know about the game so far, and trying to make a prediction of what's going to happen in the rest of the game. So understanding that opportunity cost of your play could help you make the best decision that you have, because you can understand the possible set of plays that you could have made if you hadn't used up that cards. If you look at all of those things, all of those possible plays before you make that play, then you're less likely to overlook a play that you could have made that would have been better. So that just sounds like me rambling for a second, but let me give you a real world example. One of the things that I talked to you guys about a long time ago was I used to play X-Sabers, and since I didn't have enough money at the time for what's it called, Emmer's Blade, I would use Giant Rat as my battle summoner because it's basically the same thing. So I was playing against a guy, and we were in sudden death, and I knew that he was playing Dragoonides, and I knew that he had what did he have? He had a Scrap Iron Scarecrow face down, and I also knew that we were both top decking, and I had a Veiler in my hand, and a Call of the Haunted face down, and if I ended my turn with more life points than my opponent, then I would have won the game. Now, since I wasn't thinking about the opportunity cost of making my play, I didn't actually think about a possible play that could have won me the game. So what I did was I sat on the effect Veiler, and I thought, maybe if he summons a monster then I can effect Valor it, and then I can protect myself by Call of the Haunting the Giant Rat, which is the only card that I have in my graveyard. And then during the next turn, what happened was he normal summoned a Dux, which has 1500 attack points. All I had was a Giant Rat. I could have called the Haunted from my graveyard and a Valor in my hand, which didn't do me much good, and I lost the game because he dealt 100 life points worth of damage. If I had thought about the opportunity cost of that play, I would have thought of the things that I could have done with those resources, and one of those things I could have done was call the Haunted back my Giant Rat, normal summon the Valor, and make a level 5 summon, which would have given me the magical android I had in my extra deck, which would have meant that I ended my turn with more life points than my opponent. So that's a real life perspective on what it's kind of an extreme example, but that's just kind of an idea of what thinking about the opportunity cost of your play can give you in game. However, you can think about or opportunity costs before you even go into a game when you are looking at your deck building. Because another way that we could define or opportunity cost in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the cost of putting a card into your deck. The true cost of putting a card into your deck are the possible cards that you could have used that space for. So when you put in a card, you want to make sure that it is a better option than another card that you could have put in that particular slot. So when you are deciding whether you want that third effect Valor or Maxi or whatever, you should think about how many opportunities you would have to use that card versus the opportunities of another card, like maybe a Fiendish Chain. The opportunity cost of putting in that third effect Valor is the space that you could have used for a Fiendish Chain or a Mirror Force or another monster. So you want to think when you're making your deck building, how important is this card to my deck? And how often do I really need to draw it? And that's really the opportunity cost, are the other things that you could have had available to you while you're deck making. This can also apply to trading to a degree, because a card's monetary cost, a card's eBay cost or whatever, is its nominal cost. It's what we think its real value is, but the real value of a card is what you can do with that card. Can you sell that card for money? Is it likely that somebody's going to want it? Can you move it to make your collection bigger or to finish a deck? Is it a card that you need for your deck? These are things that you can all put into consideration of the value of your item before you make a trade for it that is actually more valuable to you than thinking about its eBay cost, which we often as competitive players get kind of hooked up on. So that is just the basic overview of what opportunity cost means to Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know. Let me come back from that train wreck for a second. If you didn't like the video, let me know why in the comment section below. And then, of course, subscribe for more deck discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. And I hope that you guys can come up with some better ideas for how to use opportunity cost in Yu-Gi-Oh! In the comment section below. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.